give the chance. No. No.
Okay. I want to call this work session meeting to order, Thursday, May 7th. City Council and Planning Commission, both. I see that we have a quorum here for the Planning Commission. And next item is visitor communication. This is the time provided for individuals. Okay, sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we could,
We're all here.
yeah, and I can acknowledge all the members of our city council are here.
Present and accounted for.
Yes,
The accounted for part's important.
yes, and awake.
Well, I don't know about that.
Okay. Visitor communication. This is the time provided for individuals wishing to address the commission or council regarding issues not already on the agenda. I see we have one here. Kathy? Please state your name and address.
Kathy Russell, 1006 West Collier Glacier Drive. And I have a question about a clarification on citizen input. On the, I get the application piece of it, and that on the 21st or so, there's a public hearing to approve the application, and that's more the physical land piece of it. And then the second piece is the annexation policy. And so my question is, where's the community input on the annexation policy? Because as I read through the website, it talked about workshops for the two bodies and then a public hearing, but it didn't say anything about citizen input. And I know at a public hearing, you have time, we have time to give our input at then, but it's not going to occur until the final draft is. So if we have something that we feel is important, we're not given feedback until the final draft is done. And so I have a question, like clarifying question, because I don't know if it just wasn't included in the website on that page, or if you're only giving us an opportunity during the public hearing to have input. And then I had a question about like what criteria is being used to be included in the annexation policy. So how are you determining, I mean, the housing is in there, but how are you going to determine what warrants being in the annexation policy and what is addressed at a different time? And so I think those were my questions that I had, just hoping that by the end of this meeting it will be covered, but if it's not, sometime get an answer, especially about the citizen input on the annexation policy and how you determine which topic warrants being in that policy.
Thank you. Sure.
Comments, so we might have a little extra time to
Okay.
do that. So the first question I think was about the UGB amendment, the time for public comment for that. Sure. Yeah, right now we are conducting workshops with the Planning Commission and the Council, and typically we don't take public comment during the actual workshop just to provide enough time to for those bodies to be able to discuss. But there's public comment at each meeting, that at the council meetings at 6:30, that as an opportunity. There's obviously the opportunity with the Planning Commission at the beginning of the meetings as well. And then in addition to that, you can certainly write letters to the council and the commission. In fact, we've already received a letter that was addressed directly to the council on annexation, so they are receiving that information. So that's another great way to get in front of them. And then on your last part, maybe that's a discussion for another day. I'd be happy to sit down with you and talk a little bit more about the differences between annexation and area planning and kind of what the criteria is for that. So, yeah.
Okay, I see we have no minutes to approve, so on to the workshop.
Okay. Chair, welcome to everybody else, the council, mayor, the council, and other commissioners, and the members of the public to this workshop. We're excited to have this opportunity for the two bodies to get together and talk. We have a couple different items on the agenda today. One is to get ready for the public hearing that we have scheduled on May 21st with the Planning Commission. So typical to how we do our public hearings, we usually do a workshop in advance of that to make sure that that the commission understands what the request is, what the criteria for review are, and any other questions they might have. It's not the intention at this time to get into the merits of the request, but it's more to kind of really understand so that you're prepared for the public hearing. As far as the council, we haven't scheduled the date for the hearing for council yet. It's kind of to be determined and to see how it goes with the Planning Commission. Simultaneous to the city application is a county application process, and they have scheduled a hearing with their Planning Commission on May 28th. So we'll see how those hearings go, and then we'll schedule the council meeting, which we will try to do a joint hearing with the Board of County Commissioners at the same time, hopefully sometime this summer. So I'll give you a little bit of background on this urban growth boundary amendment, just for everybody's a little refresher on how we got to this point. Late 2023, council directed staff to pursue this UGB amendment after quite a bit of study and analysis to arrive at the conclusion that the urban growth boundary needed to be amended to accommodate future growth. In spring of 2024, the city kicked off the amendment process. We hired MIG to help us out with that, and I just wanted to note that members of MIG, that's the land use plan firm that we have engaged to help us out with this, are on the line, Matt Hasty and Andrew Parrish, as well as I believe Melissa Ryan is our contract attorney helping us out with the UGB adoption. She may or may not be on there. I can't see if she is or not, but if you guys have any questions okay, great. So if you have any questions that might be more suitable for them, feel free to ask them, and they're available. So moving along, the process for determining the UGB amendment boundary concluded in late 2025 with the UGB steering committee recommendation that we are going forward with as part of this amendment. Early February 2026, the city submitted an application to the county that I was just referring to, as well as a start of the review of our own request to amend our comprehensive plan. So essentially, our comprehensive plan is being amended to add in the expanded area. The Shoes County comprehensive plan is being amended to basically remove their previous designation and replaced by our designation that I'll talk about a little bit more. So talked about the hearing dates. Yeah, let's just kind of move forward into the presentation. It's a comprehensive plan amendment, comprehensive plan map amendment, essentially. We're not We will be proposing some changes to some of the policies. If you recall, going through the comprehensive plan, it's made up of different chapters, and mostly it's policies. There will be some amendments to the policies. That's not part of this request. Essentially, what we're asking for is an amendment to the land use map that is in the comprehensive plan that will show what our boundaries are and land use designations. So this is the proposal for the UGB amendment shown here on the screen in yellow. That's the recommended boundary from the steering committee that we are going forward with. That's the 318 acres. In terms of the what we're modifying or what we're amending as part of the comprehensive plan, on the left you'll see the existing land use map that does not show the expanded area in it, but it also shows different colors within the boundary that represent different land use designations that help guide future decisions, future rezoning decisions, things of that nature. So the map on the right is the map that we are proposing to amend the comprehensive plan to. And as you'll see, well, it's tough to see, but the designation that's being applied to that expanded area is UAR, which stands for Urban Area Reserve. And that's a designation that we have in our comprehensive plan. And that's basically a holding zone for the UGB until such time a property owner's petition for annexation. And on the heels of this UGB amendment process, we'll be embarking on the area plan process, which will take that green area that is designated UAR and start to apply some of these other land use designations, such as multifamily residential or just plain residential or commercial. And that land use map kind of forms the basis as the guide for future annexations. So this is kind of the crux of what the amendment request is. And feel free to jump in at any time with any questions. Talked about the adoption hearing process. This would be the city adoption process. It doesn't show the county's adoption process, which runs parallel to ours. So in terms of what the Planning Commission and the Council would be called upon to analyze is the applicable review criteria associated with these requests. Some of those criteria are the Sisters Development Code, and some of them are in the Oregon Revised Statutes and the Oregon Administrative Rules. So when 7 days before the hearing for the Planning Commission, staff, as traditionally has done, will issue a staff report, and we will lay out all these different criteria with staff findings and an analysis of how we feel that the proposal complies with the requirements. And just digging a little deeper into what those applicable review criteria are for the information or for the criteria that's in the Development Code. There's 4 primary criteria. One, that the approval of the request is consistent with the statewide planning goals. And 2, approval of the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan. So I don't know if you're familiar with the statewide planning goals, but there's 18 statewide planning goals. Not all of them are applicable to Sisters because they're statewide planning goals. Some of them have deal with coastline or other kinds of unique issues that we don't deal with here. But when we updated our comprehensive plan, we were required to incorporate all the statewide planning goals into our comprehensive plan. So all the goals you see right there under our comprehensive plan have an equivalent statewide planning goal. And we, as also part of each of those chapters, have goals, objectives, and policies about how to implement the comprehensive plan. And so whenever there's a change in policy, land use-wise, we're required to analyze the change against all those policies to make sure that where we're going is consistent with the comprehensive plan direction. Just some examples of those. Goal 8 is economic conditions in our comprehensive plan. Example, provide adequate opportunities for a variety of economic activities vital to the health, welfare, and prosperity of the city's community. City shall periodically monitor and ensure an adequate supply of land for the needs of commercial, mixed use, and light industrial development and employment purposes. So how we complied with that in this instance is that we did an economic opportunities analysis that took a look at our population growth and determined what kind of needs, commercial and employment needs we would be needing in the future. So that's all been incorporated into this request. Another example would be, let's see, urbanization, making sure that that we are urbanizing in an orderly fashion, and that relates to our request. And then, in terms of statewide planning goals, goal 7, I think is not up there, but areas subject to natural hazards, making sure that we're protecting people and property from natural hazards. One example of how we did that was making sure that we are not counting the floodplain portions of the land in our adjacent to Whitechoose Creek and Indian Ford Creek in our land needs. So we're basically removing that land from the calculations, and we don't need that land to meet our housing and other needs. So removing that area so that we're not subjecting future residents to risk associated with natural hazards. So those are just kind of a little flavor of kind of what these criteria mean and in terms of how we apply it to the Urban Growth Boundary Amendment. Any questions on that before I move forward? No. Third criteria relates to adequacy of public facilities and transportation networks. Basically, that we have to analyze and say whether or not the property or affected area is presently provided with adequate public facilities, services, and transportation to support the use, or such facilities and services and transportation networks are planned to be provided concurrently with the development of the property. Since we are only requesting that these properties be brought in concurrent to the county request for the comprehensive plan amendment, we are requesting a zoning amendment. But the zoning amendment is from the existing rural residential 10, and that 10 means minimum 10 acres per dwelling, to a UAR 10, which is a urban area reserve 10. So essentially, this rezone is not going to have any effect while properties remain in the county. It's going to have no further effect on transportation or utility infrastructure, because you can't really do much more than what you can now. Now, when the properties are brought into the city, that's when we will be taking a look at what the impacts of the future development are, and ensuring that they have city water, city sewer, and adequate transportation facilities to accommodate that development. But for the purposes of this review, the impact is negligible in terms of what we're going to see out there initially. Then 4 is compliance with the transportation planning rule. That's a state law that basically directs cities and counties to assess whether any proposed plan amendment and zone change will have a significant effect on the transportation system. Basically, the test here is to compare the trip generation potential for the property, assuming a reasonable worst-case development scenario under the existing and proposed zoning. And if the trip generation potential increases under the proposed zoning, additional operational analysis may be required to assess whether the rezone will significantly affect the transportation system. And then conversely, if the trip generation under the proposed zoning is equal to or less than that under the existing zoning, no additional operational analysis is required, and we can conclude that the proposal does not significantly affect the transportation system. So we had our transportation engineer basically quantify this, put some science behind it, and we'll include that as part of the staff report. Basically, that concludes that there will be no significant effect to the transportation system on account of this amendment. Again, because it's only being changed from one low-density zone to another low-density zone at this time. This will be a different topic when, at such time when somebody proposes an annexation, then that analysis will be much more pertinent and significant.
Scott, is that because you don't have specifics ahead of time, so you can't really?
Yeah, we don't, at this point, you know, till somebody annex, they're under the county zone. And so basically you can do rural uses. I think the UAR also allows you to do a daycare, to maybe do a kennel or some allowed uses. So we did have to take a look and analyze what effect the potential of those uses would have on the transportation system. But with some changes to the county code to limit the size of some of those, the conclusion of our transportation engineer was that that wouldn't have a significant effect. So,
Yes, so I have a question about that same thing. So
sure.
these people that are in the UAR, are they going to be able to function normally? Like they can go get a building permit and build a house or a garage and still act like they're in the county completely because they're not in the city yet?
Yeah, but
No additional restrictions on them?
correct. They'll still be subject to the county zoning and the county rules, but whatever those rules allow them to do, essentially what they can do today, they should be able to do until such time the property decides to petition the city for annexation.
And their tax base will remain with the county?
Yeah, I'm not as versed on the tax implications, but you know, once it comes to the city, obviously the taxing situation changes because now they're getting city services. But just being in the UGB, but still being in the county, there might be a small impact to it, but not. My understanding is it's not significant.
I'd like to follow up to that question, if you don't mind. One of the things that people can do out in the county is build an ADU. Right now, you can do it in RR10 between 2.5 and 5 acres lot size, and I'd really like to know if when they cross over to URA 10, make sure that is also included, because I don't want them to remove the right of them to build an ADU if they're still out in the county just because they got rezoned into the UAR or URA, urban reserve, whatever you call it.
Urban areas.
I just want to make sure that piece is also mobile, because I think it's important for landowners to know if they're going to lose, you know, if they were going to lose that right to be able to do so. At least they got to know, and I think we should make sure that zone can include ADUs.
That could be a pretty big financial impact on somebody.
Right.
I'll have to check into that. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Just doesn't have to be now, just later.
Yeah. Any other questions? Those are good questions. Any other questions on?
I have one more, actually.
Yeah.
So, two. The zoning, will there be any zoning limits outside of, the UAR, will there be any additional zoning limits once, like when they get annexed in, are we going to not allow them to do like highway commercial, or is there a list of zones that we will allow that we're not going to allow?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question. So right now it's just a big blob. The boundary's a blob. It doesn't designate any type of use allowed there at all, other than just a holding zone. Well, you can continue to do what you can do in the county, but the area plan will start to identify, you know, if your property, you know, we're going to plan out all the different uses, that the land use designations that will define whether your property is highway commercial in the future, or more like a downtown commercial, or more like multifamily, or more like residential.
But we're not going to put any restrictions on them.
Not while they're in the county, but when they come into the city.
Then we'll have, we're not going to, right now, we're not going to say, we're not interested in one particular zone or another.
Not until such time they annex, then there is some thought behind it. There will be a land use map that the expectation is that when they come in, that they will apply those land use designations to that property.
It'll be area plan first and then annexation. Right?
Correct.
So people will know when they want to annex what zone they're.
Correct, and they'll be involved with that process. The property owners will be involved with that process. So, yeah. Any other questions on?
Just a clarification on that. So if somebody has a residential, you know, house and whatever around it, and then they were to come into the city, into highway commercial or any other non-residential zone, are they required to give up the residential, or does it kind of become, I mean, I've seen it in other places where you kind of have these weird little pockets where, that's just what was there and they continue on, but that would be a good kind of
Yeah.
picture to have. And would they have to then, if they were able to stay, could they keep a little bit of property around them, or would it kind of, I realize it's up to negotiation, but kind of some information around that would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah. If it's like a single family in a commercial district, that might be a little unusual. I mean, maybe there could be a special carve out to retain that particular home in that zone. Typically we don't allow single family in the middle of a commercial zone. It's not ideal, but if it was something that maybe got worked out in an annexation agreement, potentially we could write in a carve out for that. You do on occasion see older homes on slightly larger lots in the middle of much more dense subdivisions. You do see that on occasion where maybe the value of the owner wanted to keep the house, or the value of the house was such that they didn't want to take it down. So there would be an opportunity for that, but how big the parcel would be a question, because we have minimum densities that we have to achieve. So it can't be like a 5-acre parcel in the middle of a 20-acre development. That might be an issue. But is it on a 10,000 acre lot as opposed to a 4,000? Maybe. Yeah.
I think I want to echo what Council President Madul said. I think that as we look at bringing properties in that have been used in the use that they're in for a long time, and let's say, using your example, we decide it's going to be downtown commercial, urban residential. It's going to be some use that's not residential. Let's leave it at that way. And I'd be very uncomfortable with kind of coming in and saying to somebody, well, pack up, because we're not going to allow residents in this particular zone. I think that's problematic for me personally.
I think in general, you can't force them to develop, but you also they also won't be able to develop unless they're going to develop to the zone that they're going to end up being in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be that gray area.
But as
and
we
some of
talk-
those people might be like connector pieces between developments and stuff like that, and that's why you get those little pockets once in a while. But I think for a general rule, I don't think we can tell them to develop, but I also think we can say you can't develop any more residential within downtown commercial.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I think I think when we talk about density, which is one of my least favorite words in this whole process, because when we talk wildfire and density in the same phrase, they kind of bump into each other. I think that as we look at these areas, we don't want to have islands. We've talked about that. But you may create islands if indeed somebody says, hey, I don't want to be zoned whatever, light industrial or whatever the zoning might be, and I'm just going to sit here in my house and enjoy it, and I'll stay in the county. But we could create islands should that occur.
There's definitely going to be some non-conforming uses that'll carry on for long periods of time.
Yeah, but I know that one of the things that we were told up front was that we were going to try to keep from creating pockets, islands within this area because of the density. So is that going to fly in the face of trying to meet the state's requirement on density? Just a thought. I don't expect an answer today, but those are things that are rolling around the back of this week-old brain over here.
Good discussions for area planning for annexation criteria.
What you see a lot of is it'll stay like that for a while, and then eventually it transfers to the heirs, and then the heirs say, well, wow, we could put 20 pieces of whatever here, and then it changes.
Yeah, tends to naturally take care of itself over time, especially if you're an island and you're surrounded by density. That tends to kind of take away a little of the rural feel of your of your lot. So, I mean, it can happen, but I think over time the experience in Oregon has been that these things eventually come into the urban growth boundary. I'm sure there's I'm sure there's some exceptions. Just continuing along in the time, just to make sure we keep the time to our agenda as much as we can. So I mentioned that there's ORSs, the Oregon Revised Statutes, come into play in this process. And what those are codified statutory laws of Oregon representing the legal basis for local jurisdictions, land use authority, and describe the process for UGB expansions. ORSs are implemented by the OARs, which basically the ORSs kind of state what the goal is, and the rules basically provide the specific implementation direction. And these are some relevant ones here on the screen that allows us to stay under the existing rules because we initiated in 2023 rather than the revised rules. That's why we want to get this adopted before the end of 26. And this second one talks about the prioritization of land within the UGB. Also, the boards also participated in the kind of the formation of the formation of the boundary. We checked in with Planning Commission and Council through the process as the steering committee formulated the recommended boundary. And the OARs and the ORSs that we're kind of referring to were all those factors that we took into account to actually arrive at the boundary. Looking at the study area all the way around the city, the prioritization of lands, which lands were the first priority, second, third, fourth priority lands. And then we applied these Goal 14 factors that helped us decide which lands were the most preferential, including efficient accommodation of land needs, orderly and economic provision of public facilities and services, the environmental, social, energy, and economic consequences of a particular boundary, and then what the farm and forest compatibility are with that, or with it. So those are, and here's a list of some other factors that we incorporated, or rules that we basically went by as we went through that process, including the housing needs analysis, the EOA, addressing transportation impacts, statewide land use goals, using the population forecasting methods in terms of how we arrived at what that 2043, I think it was at the time, population, how we inventoried the existing buildable lands to determine how much of that growth could occur in the city versus how much we need to expand. We took a look at the land use efficiency measures, which helped us use our existing land more efficiently by increasing the allowed densities, introducing a bigger variety of housing types into our zones, things like that we did. In summary, a data-driven and public process that led to the selection of the preferred UGB alternative. And again, all these things will be detailed in your staff packet, so you'll have some carve out next weekend to not go hiking and read the packet instead.
Or read it just before bedtime. Sleep well.
Not recommended.
1 page a night.
Any questions?
Scott, I have a kind of a question that connects to this, that the state just passed some measures that would affect, what land you can, additional land you can bring into urban growth. And I think some of them don't apply to us because of the size that we are, but there's others that do. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Do you have one in specific in mind, or?
Well, I think we can bring in a smaller amount of acres, like 50 acres, but it has to go towards a retirement community. Is that?
Yeah, it's 4082. Yeah.
Is that the revised one-time UGB edition?
There was another one that's related. It's a little bit different.
Okay.
But
I'm not as versed on that one. I know that the state was looking at I think have made some changes to the one-time UGB edition that we contemplated here, but because of the standards that applied to be eligible, we did not comply with that. So I think there's been some changes. I might just plug Matt or Andrew or Missy as well if they want to chime in on any of those things that they know about.
I'll go ahead and briefly go first. Our understanding is that There are a couple of new UGB provisions that the state has put together. I think that a lot of those relate to a one-time ask for specific use, and this is all operating kind of under the older rules. We're a little bit grandfathered in because of when we started the process, but there are opportunities potentially for other UGB amendments that relate to a specific use, and beyond that, we're going to have to do some research because it's all pretty recent.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, any other follow-ups, Matt and Andrew, Missy, on anything that we discussed about the UGB amendment hearing? Okay. Yeah, we can give you some more information on the. It's kind of simultaneous, but they are a week behind.
Is there any, they have any pushback on any of this, to your knowledge?
I mean, they've asked some good questions about some of the provisions in our request that we've responded to, transportation being one of them. They asked questions that we were able to answer by engaging our transportation engineer to specifically what I was talking to you about, comparing the traffic impacts between one zone and the other. There was some talk about a provision of how much percentage of land you can account for public facilities and right-of-way. There's a provision in the state OARs about a safe harbor, which means you can just account for 25% of the land being accounted for public right-of-way, public facilities, things of that nature, schools, parks. Ours is higher than that 25%, so we're exceeding that. So they asked some questions about that, and we were able to document why ours was a little bit higher. We were able to compare some subdivisions and sisters, how much right-of-way subdivisions consume your streets. We know we're going to have some roundabouts out there, so it could even increase that right-of-way ask. We have some bigger, we took in a little more land because we wanted the steering committee wanted to have some bigger recreational corridors, some trail corridors along the creek, and be able to control the preservation of that. So questions like that have been asked, but we haven't had any indication that they would recommend negatively against the proposal. I think there's been a little bit of public comment, but nothing significant yet. And to that note, both the city and the county sent out notices to all the property owners within the urban growth boundary, proposed urban growth boundary, as well as all the properties within 250 feet of the boundary, because not only the people in the boundary affected, but those on the boundary of the boundary are affected as well. So I wanted to make sure that they were aware. Got some phone calls, questions. Anything else before we move on? Annexation. Okay. So as most of you are aware, we're taking a look at updating our annexation ordinance, and have already held multiple workshops with the council. We brought the Planning Commission in, as you can see, April 16th, as we better understood that the location of the annexation ordinance was going to be in the development code, and where not the municipal code where it is currently, so the Planning Commission will be involved with this decision. We will hold as many workshops as we need to get it right, but we want to also make sure we move diligently so that we have our ordinance in place before or at the time that around the time or before the UGB is adopted, so that it's in place before we get any requests, petitions for annexation. So the intent of this workshop was not to come to any greater clarity or to wordsmith or to get into the details, because we only have a half an hour to do that, and I don't think that's feasible. There's a lot of stuff to it, but because the Planning Commission is kind of new to this and the council's been discussing it for maybe a little bit longer, I thought it might be helpful for you all to maybe have a discussion, seems like housing, affordable housing is kind of the tougher nut to crack in terms of the details. The other things that go in an annexation ordinance are fairly standard, throughout the state, but affordable housing is kind of a unique one, and the council has directed staff to look into requirements for affordable housing, generally around 30% of the units being affordable. Now, what does that look like in terms of the details? There's still a lot of wrangling and kind of discussion to go on there, but I think the intent of this was to maybe for the Planning Commission to hear a little bit from the council in terms of what their goals are, and then Planning Commission to tell the council kind of what they think as well. So we've got till 5:15 or so, and if there's questions, I can answer those. But if anybody wants to kick us off, or if you need a little more background to get you primed, but I did put some topics up on the screen there, and under affordable housing, some things that are being contemplated or discussed. So does anybody want to jump right in and give their thoughts or ask a question?
Affordable housing covers a lot, right? It covers a lot of income levels, so.
In our code.
So even the 30% gets divided up into different.
At least 3.
In our code, it's 80% of the area median income or less is affordable housing. We also have a defined term in our code of workforce housing. That technically is anything under 150%, but I guess for the purposes of this discussion, it would be 81 to 150% of the AMI. So we have some documentation from our housing plan that basically gets to, okay, 30%, what is our need in the community? And maybe we start getting into the details a little too much, and then council was kind of like, maybe we need to step back and just kind of better understand what the need is. And so we do have some information in our housing plan that we did about 3 years ago that takes a look at the demographics of the community and starts to divide up the different categories, even 0 to 30% AMI, 30 to 60, 60 to 80. What is the need within all those different categories? Because we know we need housing in all those categories, right? It's not just, we don't need just the very low end, we need some of the higher end. And the lower end can be rental, and the higher end could be maybe for sale units. Everybody is in a different situation and have different needs.
I think we need to be prepared to provide in all those levels, at least have some set aside real estate for that, for every step of the way there. I have so we should be careful with putting strict restrictions on affordable housing, because a lot of the funding comes from the state and federal, and if those fundings don't come through, and then developers are stuck with requiring that, and they're not getting any state funding, it could potentially stunt some progress.
Yeah, Scott and I had a conversation with Lynn McConnell, who runs the kind of local HUD agency, and so she builds affordable housing all day, and she also brought that up. And so, kind of need to look at the wording and figure out how to make sure it's not avoided, but also not holding up the end. Yeah, definitely hear that.
Very slippery, it's a tight spot to be in. We can't abandon it, that's for sure.
Yeah, Scott mentioned a percentage of 30%, and I know that that's a goal of, the governor and everything, but as we know, not all developers can even meet that on a fairly standard subdivision. And the other factor that we always have to think about is sometimes these annexations are very small parcels of property, and if it's a single owner of land, I'm not sure that they'll be able to even match maybe even a 25%. So I think that we should be considering tiers of sizes of annexations as well. Not that, I think we should incentivize affordable housing for even some of the smaller developers, but I don't know if we can require, a 30 or even a 25% on some of those smaller developers, just because it might be somebody like me who I couldn't build, 6 houses and have, 2 of them are, affordable housing, I don't think. So we just have to be careful is all I'm saying. And I think a tier system of sizes of developments could be a way we could make it easier on some of the smaller developers.
It's all going to depend on land cost too, so it's going to be up to the landowners. They're chipping in on this basically.
Yeah.
Otherwise, stuff isn't going to get built.
We've had a few developers pledge that they can do it, but I assume that they're also looking at the funding that's available to help them achieve it. So
Yeah.
if the funding remains the same, then I think it's possible on most levels. But if the funding goes away, then it's not going to happen. It just won't be.
You know how construction is, it's an economy of scale. If you're doing the same
Yeah.
thing 6 times, or it's harder than doing the 100.
Yeah.
I think that the problem I have occasionally when we use the term affordable housing is that we really need to think, in my mind anyway, when you think affordable housing, you think of that workforce level all the way down. So affordable has always tended to mean Section 8 and that kind of housing that's very dedicated to the folks that are at the lower end of the money spectrum, and that's where the federal money comes in. Federal money generally doesn't show up much for workforce housing or those things, so we need to think about how we incentivize that as well, because if we can't get teachers and nurses and people that are in that higher income level into some kind of a home in this town, we're going to lose an awful lot of what's happening. So I think we need to think both ways. From the low end of the scale up to folks that maybe have some professional money that are making about 150% or 120% AMI, and have that some of those properties probably are going to have to be deed restricted, so that using the model that some other developers have used to ensure that housing stays that way, so someone doesn't come in and buy up an inexpensive house as a vacation home and take it off the market. So that's an important thing to me, and I'm going to insist that we continue to look as a council, let me rephrase that we continue to be sure that we keep that upper echelon of folks that are priced out of the housing market in mind.
I just have a question to council in your discussions, following up, Gary, on your concern about someone who may be buying a second home. Has council thought holistically about how this annexation policy works in tandem with other city initiatives? I know there's been a little bit of talk of like a construction excess tax, but what other places are making sure that we're not kind of deferring to people who are potentially second homeowners and really prioritizing local residents?
I mean, one thing we did a few years ago when we went over the short-term rental review was that one of the changes we made was that no short-term rentals in any new developments or annexations. And so, like, that's one thing we did to kind of speak to that. But yeah, any other comments in regards to that question? Or I mean, it's part of this process now.
You mentioned the construction excise tax. I think that the council, we haven't discussed it a whole lot, and I don't think we all know where we stand on it, to be honest with you. But it is an interesting piece of the puzzle. I'm generally not in favor of raising taxes, but at the same time, it just kind of depends on the situation. And so I think that's kind of a hot button item that's going to come up, and there's going to be opinions in the public from both sides of that for sure.
In answer to your question, as I think about it as well, you have to look at all the things on the plate as to how you deal with it. And some of it's through deed restricted properties, which then again don't make second homes. Some cities, I'm not suggesting we do this here, although we have discussed it, some cities have implemented a tax on vacant homes that perpetually just sit vacant. So that money all goes towards the money you have to give to the government to fund the affordable housing. It all goes into an affordable housing pool. Those are all things. It's like you're throwing a whole bunch of confetti up in the air. You see those ads where somebody's trying to grab dollar bills out of the air, and you don't know when you're going to get. I think we have to keep all of our options open, and as we get closer, certainly with assistance from the people in this room, narrow it down to what's workable in Sisters. As Michael likes to say, we're different than a lot of places, and I believe that. So, but I think that's all things that in the back of my mind are really important to ensure that if we bring land into the city and we go through this process and we bleed out the ears with all the crap that goes on when doing it, that we ensure that we're meeting our goal of housing people who want to live and work in this town and make it a better town so we can keep strong schools, we can get a clinic. You know, people can come here and work, and we have places for some of the folks that live outside of town that we worry about to be in town. And so all levels of housing, but biggest issue for the federal money is your match, bringing money to the table to get somebody to do it, and that's what some of these processes go towards. You take that money that you make from whatever that is and you put it into a fund so we can bring a developer in like Northwest, yeah, that works. So sorry, I kind of rambled. Just tell you.
I would also ask that if you have ideas that you want to bring to council, I mean, you're absolutely welcome to email us, call us. I mean, we want to hear from you. I mean, like that's part of, this is like the growth industry of thinkers, right? So, yeah, I mean, just because we haven't come up with it or taken it, you know, to bat doesn't mean that we're not open, you know, especially if you find something that we've not seen before. Yeah, so please.
I know one of the concerns I have with this UGB expansion, especially after the flat fire last year, is some of the things that Kathy Russell's brought up with neighborhood fire-wise, fire ideas. The clustering is something that's concerning sometimes with new development. Side setbacks, which, hey, traditionally we're always 5 feet, so we can plug all these dense homes in. But let's be honest, 10 feet between houses is a danger, right? So I think that all of us, and you know, I follow the mayor's lead on a lot of this because that's her thing. But we just have to continually think about it. That's the sisters that I know, and is always being concerned about other things than just affordable housing and density. It's everything at the same time, like Gary mentioned. So if you guys have ideas about that stuff too, we'd love to hear them. I'm always good for a coffee, as you know.
And the one thing that we're trying to get an answer for in regards to that is the state of Oregon does have like a memorandum of an agreement with IBHS, the Institute for Business and Home Safety, on kind of moving forward on some wildfire communities, things like that. We don't know the details of that yet, but they also know that we are in the middle of this process. So we're, you know, staff's kind of in the middle of trying to maybe set up a meeting, State Fire Marshal's office, to get some intel on that. Yep. Because we're in the middle of it. So more to come on that topic, and maybe there could be some positive stuff that comes out of that.
And I think, and I think the thing that concerns me the most is that we did the density measures way back when to determine all this long before the flat fire, long before we really understood what happened in places like Paradise and places like that. And so I kind of sit back and I look at it and go, did we box ourselves into this corner when we need to be somewhere else? And what does that do to the acreage, and what does that do to what we can and can't do? I don't have any answers. It's just what goes through my mind. They were cutting trees at my property today to make a little bit more safety zone. Those are all things that I think we may have to look at and talk about as we think about what Kathy has talked about and some others, is what does that do to setbacks? You know, I agree with you, 5 feet's not enough, 10 feet between is not enough, because that brings the roof lines probably closer to 6 feet. So
the question is, how prescriptive are we at an annexation?
Yes.
Versus area planning, and you know,
right.
where do these elements
where do they fit
properly fit in? That's,
yep.
I'm not sure. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, we talk a lot about density, but you know, if we don't have density, we have urban sprawl. So we have to kind of find that balance there. Because when we're going to the UGB committee and everything, everybody that I saw on the street that, you know, knew I was there and tried to talk to me, we're all talking about, I hope you guys aren't doing urban sprawl, because you know, maintaining the livability of Sisters is going to be important. So we have to balance, have some density, you know, but, you know, and try to prevent that urban sprawl, I guess, you know, that balance. And I was a wildland firefighter, so I understand, you know, about, you know, the fire-wise and all that kind of thing. But again, there's a balance, and there's things we can do to protect those houses so they're not so flammable, if you will. But I think we have to be really careful, bad mouth and density too much, because otherwise we're going to have sprawl if we're going to have that same number of people moving here.
Yeah, density can be solved in regards with like, triplexes and quadplexes, condominiums, especially because what's that? Yeah, the middle housing types, because, sometimes you're hitting a certain size or number of units and you're triggering more commercial developments, building requirements like sprinklers and other things. And so it's a way to get people close together with shared walls, but, still have an opportunity for ownership or something like that. So there are creative solutions, and then you can have green space, and it's, there's a lot of things on the table. Optimistic. Yeah.
Balancing the two.
Some of those principles in the IBHA were rotating houses from each other to create better wind in case Vambers are coming. I learned from Kathy a little bit on some of that stuff. And honestly, a lot of that fits our design standards better. It keeps us from building houses on a straight street and having all the facades face the same way. It gets a little boring, no offense to. And it keeps the roofs from getting further apart, because if you have, lot lines that are not straight and just rectangular, I think it's both fire-wise smart, and it's a little more interesting that we don't have just all these straight streets and all the houses are just in a row.
I
That's
could
kind of
drive you around
boring.
and show you some of those.
So
That keeps the livability too. The whole reason.
I think it does.
Because this is a great place to live.
It's a little harder on the density because you're not having all these straight lines, but I think that,
You don't have people looking in through
Yeah.
windows that are 5 feet apart.
so I just like everybody to keep that in mind.
And I would just add one more thing, that for me, the whole annexation policy discussion has been driven by the fact that during the time I've been here, we've seen developments come in that were promised one thing or another, and then they all kind of go in a different direction. And we got a lot of feedback from the community saying, why didn't you stop this? Why didn't you do well? That land came in under old annexation language, which basically was none. There was a little bit, but not a lot. And that's why I think that as we look at how we bring this land in, because that's the only time the council and this group has the ability to say what we want that area to look like and what we want that area to do. Once it's annexed in, it falls in under those rules, and it's hands off for us.
What are you talking about? Which ones are you talking about?
Oh, we've got 2 or 3 developments. You look at Sunset Meadows came in under the old annexation policy.
Yeah, I was
Woodlands
involved in.
came in under the old annexation policy.
We were able to kind of negotiate a little bit to get some pathways through and things, but unfortunately, they met the code, so.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. And so,
Yeah.
so part of the reason we're taking a hard look at the annexation policy, and we want input from everybody in this room and probably from the community too, don't get me wrong, whoever you are back there, I can't see you, is that I want to be sure that we allow the community to be designed the way we think it should be designed for Sisters.
As a community, of course.
As a community, yes, yeah. And that's the only time we have the ability to influence that, is when we create annexation policy and apply it to the land when it comes in. That's what I'm told anyway.
So I'd like to hear from the Planning Commission on some of these other topics as well
Sure.
today. Is this working? Yep. Okay. I sound loud right here.
You didn't discuss any of those from us?
Good for all of us.
I just threw those out there, suggested topics. Those are elements of the annexation ordinance, and it's not an exhaustive list, but just to kind of get the conversation, juice the conversation. Talk about it.
No, we talked about it in our last meeting a little bit, but I'm curious what the council, have you talked about that at all?
A little, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, no conclusions, obviously.
Yeah. We talked about possibly some unique circumstances where somebody would want to annex into city limits, and that might actually benefit the city as well. So we kind of thought, well, do we want to make that a little looser so that they don't have to require the master plan or something like that. They just want to come in. Maybe their sewer's failing or what have you. But also, if it might be a block, if they're on the city boundary, limit boundary, it might be a block of other properties beyond them that do want to annex in. We don't know, depending on how it all lays out. I just wanted to add on the master planning versus annexation criteria, and where, if we decide certain items would fall under annexation, I think it's important to also say what those items would be that we decided to defer to master planning. So if we're talking about, like Mayor Letts brought up, the types of residential units, townhomes, triplexes, and so forth, if we're not going to make a requirement in annexation or any guidelines around that, then I want to know, is that going to happen in master planning? It just would help me to know where it lands in this whole process.
Just to interrupt real quick, Carrie.
What?
I'll pick on Eli. That was you.
Sorry.
And Scott, if that was like a, maybe even like a grid, just a table, right? Like what should be under annexation, what should be under master planning, or what could be under both, or.
And what another category what would be under subdivision? Or
Yeah.
Is
That would
another
be really.
another layer of requirements. Or,
Well, again, and I'll kind of defend the smaller property owners, at what size does someone have to go through a master planning process? I mean, we don't want to bully on a 2-acre parcel for this really expensive land use process, right? So I think we have to think about sizes somehow.
And through your zoning, you're going to get middle housing if it's allowed in that zone, because a developer is going to say that they can use less land, to make more money. So you can incentivize developers to do things in certain ways based on the zoning. You don't have to I don't think you really have to lay out every last item in the in the annexation.
I have a couple, go ahead.
Oh, so another piece of this is the area plan, right? And talking about, okay, where does the density go? Where does the concepts of having, homes that are maybe, configured a little bit different on the lot, or the lot sizes are in clusters or something like that? And how does that, where does that land in those 300 acres versus where do we want to focus more of that middle housing or even higher density around major transportation corridors, not blocking views, thinking it through of things like solar access and open space, parks. Where do we have maybe, fire breaks, to provide an opportunity to fight, encroaching wildfire. So, I think we've put a lot onto the area plan process, but that's where you can start to build that vision for what that area looks like and where these different uses kind of land in that area.
It seems to me that as we get into annexation, so we define our annexation code, and then when we actually execute it, we may need to go back to our area planning and revise that. It just sounds like there's a chicken and egg thing here, and we're going to learn as we have property owners wanting to annex in that maybe our area plan missed something or needs to be modified. So I hope we have a process potentially to go back and revise that if needed, or at least talk about how we would handle that.
Yeah, the annexation is not intended to get every last detail, like your one opportunity to get it. I mean, they'll also have to comply with our development code eventually, and the area plan will kind of highlight some changes that we will need to make to our development code. So don't think of it as, this one-time opportunity to get everything you need. There are certain things that are important that you can't get later, including the affordable housing. That is something that is unique to the land use in Oregon, that you can't require inclusionary zoning in land use. With annexations and I think with zoning amendments or those opportunities where you can require that. But that's something that's important to get right at annexation. asking for water rights is something I think that is something you want to ask for at the time of annexation. But in terms of getting every last detail, in terms of setbacks or heights or whatever, that can be determined later. And that will kind of come out of the area plan process, which creates the vision for what's the character of this future area, and does our code can it accommodate that, or will we need to identify things we need to change in our code to be able to have that vision be realized?
That area plan is going to be talking about the transportation for that area too. And hopefully we'll be talking about pedestrian traffic. It's not just automobiles, but bicycles. I think this is a small enough town, we should be able to bicycle any place. Again, livability.
Sure.
I agree with Rick about that.
I got one.
Prioritizing the.
I don't know if anybody in this room's against
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean?
I think there's people in this room that would advocate for it very strongly.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think you mentioned something, I don't want to lose the thought, and that is, I just lost the thought. Oh, crap. We'll come back to it. But it was what you were mentioning here, going down the list. Okay, about building heights, as those things popped into my head. We did have a discussion when we were looking at a downtown building, I think, about height. Remember the discussion about the fire department said we don't have a ladder truck that can get up that high?
I remember that.
So I'm wondering if, when you do area planning, if there are things that are in the documents you provide to the planners that are doing the area planning that says, can't be more than so many feet high, and those sorts of things, so that they don't come in with a 5-story, whatever that thing down in Bend is called, next to Market of Choice in the old mill district. And we say, well, wait a minute, all this money designing, now you can't do it, it's too tall.
Some of that's in our existing code now.
Is it?
so-
Yeah, and you see more of the code, frankly, at that level than
Right.
we do.
Just because there's not a ladder truck today doesn't mean there won't be one tomorrow too.
Well, I know.
The fire department's trying to match up what the city
Oh,
needs.
totally know that, but.
But I remember when they wanted to build that, on the main street, and we couldn't access the upper floors, there was a fire.
And I think that, I hear what you're saying too, and certainly one way is to go up, but we also have to think about the fact that the thing this town has is views. So when you get to a certain level, you start to take the views away from the surrounding area. So we need to think about that too.
Rooftop bars.
Rooftop, well, okay, all right, let's.
I do want to share some thoughts.
The views and all that.
Gary and Art, when you mentioned lessons learned from last time, was there like an analysis afterward of things you wished you'd done?
I think that for me, it was things we couldn't do.
Okay.
You know,
Do you feel like they're adequately represented in this conversation?
Oh, yeah, wait, this is what
Okay,
this is all about.
so this is 100 times better than the previous one.
Well,
I'm
I
just
think
trying to
that-
gauge.
Well, people got grandfathered in when they did their developments under older codes, and then which specified if you followed this, you could build that.
Sure.
And then you end up with straight rows of houses, all looking the same way, and
To me, the best example of it is, I'm not picking on it because they're nice residences, but you stand and you look down the street in Sunset Meadows and you see.
yes. And we knew that, we knew going in that was gonna happen, and we couldn't do anything about it.
We all did, and that's what we're trying to avoid with this annexation.
And for
But is
clar-
this
for-
annexation policy or is this area planning?
This annexation.
Okay.
Well, no, that wasn't an annexation. I mean, that was already.
It was
the city.
subdivision.
Yeah, that was,
Yeah, that was.
as a master plan subdivision.
I think we're talking about development code here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say one thing, and this is just in general.
I want to hear more.
If we don't manage it, it'll manage us, and that's it. I mean, and I'm not talking about being over restrictive or anything like that. You just want to try and hit that fine line, and that's all of us are doing, so. But if we don't do anything, then you get unintended results. That's for sure.
Yeah, I just don't want to have this conversation in 20 years where the next Michael's or Art or Gary is calling,
Yeah.
we should have done this 20 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
let's
Well-
make it now.
Bunch of idiots. Why don't we-
Yeah, why did they do that,
That's a great reminder that you said 20 years, though, because this is a 20-year plan,
Yeah.
and we're not going to get everything right at the beginning. Some of it might be great, some of it might be a little, and that's where, Cheryl, you said, We need an off-ramp a little bit somewhere, because if it's going south really fast, we need to be able to change that. So I don't know how, and I'm not telling you what to do or how to do it, because I think we just need to make sure that we have an out if we have to. And it's probably more finesse than a big out, because I don't expect this to go horribly wrong or anything.
We just have to have wiggle room.
For sure, got to have a little nuance,
Because
right?
20 years is a long time.
Yeah.
We have to flow.
I'll be happy to get out of bed 20 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, there was an occasion where we took some industrial land and moved it into residential, and, you know,
Unintended consequences.
yeah. Stuff like that'll happen.
That actually delayed all the actions we've been taking since the comprehensive plan in 21. And before that, the steering committee on the comprehensive plan, which was like 2019 and 2020. That's when I started on that committee. So I've been doing this for longer than I'd like to think about.
So I think one thing that we were struggling with, at least in our council conversations, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're trying to strike that balance of, we want to make sure we're getting affordable capital A, low A workforce housing. And, we don't get it unless we tell people we're going to get it. But how prescriptive, we've watched Ben go through this a few times in the last few years and really struggle with it. So we're trying to learn that lesson, right? Instead of it happening here, we're just watching another city go through it. And I think that's something that we're still struggling with, is how do we write it so that it doesn't scare everybody off, doesn't scare all the builders off, but we're ultimately going to get what we feel is what we want out of it. And I think that's, people can chime in and say if I'm wrong, but I feel like that was where we were, I wouldn't say stuck, but that's kind of where we left off.
It's kind of how do you adjust for, if you have a set land cost that's going to be kind of prohibitive, what else can you do to make it reasonable for a builder to do something and still come out?
Yeah. Yeah, and we can make it as simple as just saying 25%, and just leave it at that, but, there, all these other elements came in, like, well, do we want it spread out? Do we want it in one place? Is that rental housing? Is that, purchase housing? Is that both, and.
So
Yeah.
one thing we've been kind of batting around internally is how do you write something like this to be clear and objective, which is a requirement because it involves housing, but leaving some flexibility as well. So, one of the ideas was to make it very prescriptive in terms of you need to have 30%, it needs to be, certain percentages need to be in every category. They need to be the dispersed, and they need, half of it needs to be rental, half it needs to be whatever it is, something specific like that, but also leave a discretionary path for somebody who says, hey, I don't think I can meet those, but I have a different idea that I think will achieve your goals just as good. And we can say, okay, lay it on us, and we'll consider it.
Great. That gets to Council Cheryl's point of having sort of this off-ramp for this ability to get around things and change. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I'd like to give an opportunity. I don't want to put her on the spot, but Missy, if you have any thoughts, I haven't had a chance to acknowledge you, and you've been helpful in terms of guiding us on how this annexation ordinance needs to meet that clear and objective criteria, and just give you an opportunity to interject or say hi, to maybe introduce yourself to maybe
Yes.
some of I think the Planning Commission maybe hasn't had a chance
I
to.
don't know. Hello. I've just been really enjoying this discussion, and I'm Missy Ryan from the Bateman Seidel firm, and I'm assisting the city as you make your way through this fascinating UGB amendment process. One thing that has struck me is something that came up in the city council's discussion of the annexation ordinance, which is the role that middle housing is really going to start to play in handling it from a more of a market perspective. And two things that I just wanted to mention are, every session the legislature makes middle housing a little bit easier to build and site in almost every location where it can go. And as of last session, middle housing, which is, duplexes, triplexes, and up, including something called cottage clusters, which can be up to 8 small dwellings. With the duplex to quadplex, there's something that is now called a detached plex. And so no longer do those types of structures have to have shared walls. And that was in part passed because middle housing developers were finding that people just don't really want to have shared walls. They don't want to deal with them. And so essentially, to the question that someone said, well, how do you take one lot and monetize it as much as possible? This is essentially going to allow a builder to take a lot and build 2 dwellings or 3 dwellings on it, and they are completely detached. The other thing that the legislature did was this was 2 years ago, for all new subdivisions that include CC&Rs, those CC&Rs cannot prohibit middle housing. And so all subdivisions are going to have to allow, I think it's at least duplexes. I'd have to go back and check. It may be all middle housing. So I think those laws are going to have an influence on the market as to what developers who build subdivisions are going to propose. I think it's going to be naturally more of a mix of some single family dwellings like, we're used to seeing in a subdivision, but also a lot more middle housing. And when developers develop middle housing, they can take advantage of some other statutory perks and things like that. So those were the things that just struck me as part of this conversation, is that I do think that there is an additional market-based solution to how to develop housing that is not affordable, capital A, capital H housing, but housing that is affordable to people who live in the community. Those are my thoughts on that.
Guys know that capital A, capital, lowercase a, capital A being kind of more like deed restricted housing or meeting certain income limits and maybe getting funding, versus housing that just is more naturally, is more affordable, I guess, less than market rate.
We've heard that song and dance
So
before.
last week, I had not heard the term inclusionary before, and that, if I understand it correctly, pretty much means that we're advocating for a capital A affordable plus workforce. So it's including non-market rate housing. Is that?
As part of the 30% or?
Yeah, like a bigger term being inclusionary
I
housing.
think inclusionary zoning is a basic term for just requiring that developers provide affordable housing as part of their development. Like,
yeah, but both affordable and workforce?
Yeah,
right?
it could be however you want to
Yeah.
define it. I think it's open to how a city wants to define it. It could include workforce, I think.
Yes. Let's do that.
Part of the problem I have, again, I mentioned earlier, is the word affordable has been around so long, we tend to associate it with the 60% AMI type of properties. And really, if looking at what property values have done in this town, I know what happened to my house. I don't mind it, but it's going to make it hard to sell it someday, I'm pretty sure. Then you have to think about affordable in a different way. So maybe we need a different word. I don't know what it would be, but I'm thinking in my brain affordable. I'm thinking about workforce all the way down. So that
Yeah, I was just trying to introduce a new word. That's all.
I like that. I like the idea. That's why
I've been using the term subsidized housing because that's kind of what it is. The problem is that sounds not always great,
Ask
depending,
anybody from
you know what I
Chicago.
mean? It's a term that was used a long time ago for really horrible housing, to be honest. So if we can bring a new word in, that'd be awesome. I say affordable. I kind of mean the whole gamut, though. Anything that's workforce or middle housing or, lower stuff, whatever.
Affordable, a word is very subjective.
Yeah, I know.
And
It's gotten watered down, though, like Gary said.
And one of the things that we've been talking in the annexation policy discussions, we haven't made any decisions certainly, is how do you ensure that we don't have some development that we've had in the past where the developer was required to do like 10%, and, which is what I think it was way back then. And then that got done at the very end, down at the very end of the development, and they handed it to someone, you go do it. I don't build those kinds of houses. We want to ensure too that as properties get built out, that the type of housing we're talking about here gets built in conjunction with the market rate homes.
We did, Gary, we did that. We tried to do that in some of the developments with multifamily.
Yeah.
To make sure that the apartments weren't left to the very end, you know.
Right.
Which were the affordable part of the whole project. And, pardon? Yeah.
And the density, yeah. And so I think that one of the things we're trying to figure out is where does that quantified in the work that we're doing to ensure that the developer knows up front that this is going to have to happen. And when you see it, when it comes to you at the planning commission level, you see a lot more detail of what's going on than we're ever going to see. And that's good.
That's sometimes part of the
We'd be meeting
negotiation
for
on the
17
master
hours.
plan, and when we're having our meetings, you know, and we take a vote, you know, that's been there before, like. Right, yeah.
We typically allow them to do some income earning.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Right off the bat, and then by the second and third phase, we start implementing some.
And one of the ways you can do that is to say that when you get to the 30% or the 50% market rate housing, you have to now, before you can get more building permits, turn in permits for the other
Yes.
type of housing. So
Yep.
I mean, that's stuff that we're thinking about in the back of our heads too. And I know you're doing it down at that level, but the goal I have is planning commissions change, city councils change, and to make sure that we don't lose the sister's way, as Michael likes to say.
Is there code on that? Is there anything about that in the development code?
Not currently, but in the draft ordinance for the annexation, we did include some along the lines of what Councilor Ross was saying there to get that.
But definitely, I get confused in the back of my head, development code versus annexation. You know, you corrected me appropriately, by the way, on some things. Because to me, it's what is built in the end. What do I want to see when the stuff comes up out of the ground? And that's what's important to me, and I'm sure everybody else in this room too, that we ensure that we get quality housing, that we also make sure, like I said, that that the school district can hire teachers. Yes. Had two principals they hired that couldn't afford to live here and quit. You know, that's not a good sign for our town.
No, and you get firemen and police and others, people who work in restaurants.
That's one of the unique things about Sisters, is we're so far away from a community that, I mean, they have to drive so far to get here.
Yeah, I mean.
So we have to do a lot more effort to support it.
I agree totally. I mean, it's that 40
Unlike
miles,
some of the other
40
counties.
miles a day in a car that may not be the best gas mileage car.
Especially when some of those same jobs are available for the same price in Redmond.
Yes.
And it's less expensive to live there, so why are you going to commute to Sisters?
It's a difficult thing for me every day.
Oh, I bet it is.
Because I have to help those employees get to Sisters every day.
And thought about that, you're right.
So do we want to, I have a couple questions about how, again, we're not getting down to the word here, but your option here of here's some prescriptive things, or, you know, come to the table with something. I mean, it's starting to sound like a little bit like our design standards, right? We have design standards in our development code, and it's like, you don't have to do all of them. You know, it's kind of a little bit of a menu. I mean, is that something where we could do that in like a menu, like, you know, we could say pick 3 of these 5, or come to the table with your own solution, but and I'm just throwing that out the wall.
Sometimes
That kind of gets to one of my comments I wanted to make earlier about the annexation, is that when I was reading through the draft, as someone who has worked in affordable housing, it's another layer of kind of things that you have to check off. Some of them align with different funding paths, but if a developer has, let's say, 3 different funding avenues and they all have their own individual requirements, and then we're layering on top another one, some of these definitely do align, just from my experience, but then how prescriptive do we want to be? So having a menu builds in that flexibility so it's not as cumbersome, and I think that's important. The other thing I just wanted to say about some of those things on that list, like dispersed affordable housing, I think is really important, so it's intermixed. Having a mixture of rental and ownership options, and then I personally don't want us to be afraid of a shared wall. I think there are a lot of benefits that we can get out of row homes or townhomes and that style, but that kind of comes further into the area planning. In terms of the annexation, going to Councilor Breeden's point, is just having kind of flexibility with the land size and making sure that it doesn't have to be developed. I think that there's a lot that could deter current landowners or future landowners from coming in and annexing if it's too rigid, and so having that for the size of the land. And I think the same with that 25%. I don't know exactly where the 25% came from, but some type of scale to allow people to do that, because it's, at least right now, the way I understand it, it says if there's any residential, commercial, employment, or industrial land, it has to meet 25%. Is that correct?
You're looking at the ordinance, the draft ordinance?
The draft annexation, yeah.
Doesn't apply to currently with employment lands, properties that don't actually propose any residential units.
Got it.
That's
Okay.
per the discussion.
Yep, but if they have residential units in there.
For those commercial properties, do they need to contribute to affordable housing as well?
Right.
And if so, how?
Yeah. So I think generally having that flexibility is going to be helpful for people, and it reduces the barriers for people to both come in, help their neighbor potentially, or even just contribute to our larger goals. Because I think there are those levels, like this is that macro, what's the big picture, and then the area plan gives us that more detail, and then the zone, our development code, is giving us the tools for the architect to actually put, plug and play on what it's going to look like. That's all I want to say.
And it's, to your point, I was just wondering if using like the AMI brackets that we've kind of become very used to, like the 0 to 60 and 60 to 80, and I mean, do those things change over time, and is there a danger of using those, or do we feel like, just making sure we're not baking in something that, a metric or a standard that might change over time, or, I don't know enough about that.
We can always amend the ordinance, as we can any provision, to account for new concepts or new ways of thinking. I've just kind of an antidote to what you're saying. Some communities, as they get more expensive, even the above 150% need help with housing. I hope we don't ever get there, but I've seen communities that 120% is not high enough. The people that the people that get stuck in the middle between, affordable housing or workforce housing and the market housing. There's always going to be a group that's stuck in the middle that is hard to help out. But yeah, it can change over time.
One thing you would want to be careful of too, if you start saying, well, if you've got so many acres, you only have to put in 15%. If you have this many acres, it's 25%. Then you're going to get developers coming in and saying, well, I'll do a 15 at the small acreage here, and then I'll do another one, 6 months, and I'll break it all up.
We saw that over on the west side of town when the lot got divided between 3 brothers or something like that to avoid the master planning process.
Yeah.
Something like that, but
so you have to take that into consideration.
Good point.
I want to be encouraging to everybody in the room, though. If we have to forge our own path on this ordinance, like we've done in the past with fire and other things, I think that's okay. I mean, the sister's way, right? Sometimes because we're this community and this is our community, maybe we're going to be different than everybody else, and we're going to kind of blaze a little trail.
Well,
Obviously, we don't want to slow down to, we don't want to slow it down, but it's okay to be unique. Right?
I think we are blazing a trail. I don't think there is a whole lot of this out there in the code. I mean, we've asked Scott to go find it, and he's found very little, really, on this topic. And so we do have to kind of blaze the trail. But I think going into it not being, Scott has said, I mean, if we have to change it later because, wow, we made a mistake. I've made mistakes. You go back, you regroup, and you say, how do we fix it the best we can going forward? And I think that's okay.
That's encouraging too, so that's good.
Well, we could keep on discussing this topic, or we kind of want to leave a little room for some free-form discussion.
I thought that's what we were doing. I wasn't paying attention to any format.
There's some other topics that you might want to consider touching on in addition to the annexation and housing. And I just threw some possible topics up there to help with the conversation. The point of this was to kind of maybe allow folks to raise some issues that we haven't been thinking about, or something that's been that they want to talk about.
Price of gasoline and the weather?
Actually, one thing that's on there that is in the back of my mind is we've had some discussions about tiny homes on wheels and things like that.
Oh, right.
And I think as we think about ADUs, we start thinking about how we may do some of these things to especially help people out. The one thing that scares me, and maybe it's not fair, is that phrase, because a tiny home on wheels can be a travel trailer. And so we have to think about, if we want to allow that, how we build code, development code, to ensure they're built to a standard greater than what your average recreational travel trailer is built to if it's going to be a residence. So we don't have, we can see examples around town, and we also see them in other places where that doesn't work out well in the long run. And so that's just something in the back of Gary's head. I don't have an answer unless it's box kill. I like what they're doing. But I think we have to think about, what does it mean when you put an ADU on a lot? And does it have to have some kind of a platform that it sits on? Does it have to be hooked up and hauled away in 20 minutes if you bring it in, that kind of a thing? That's all stuff you may hear as we move a little bit closer to some of that. I don't have any answers, but I sure would like to have you folks think about it and hear what you're thinking, because I just don't really want to see, cluster developments don't bother me, ADUs don't bother me, tiny homes on wheels, that phrase, because what it implies bothers me.
Yeah, I think not having to have 2.5 acres to have an ADU is a good thing, but I don't necessarily think that, you want development where everybody has a travel trailer in back of their house either.
So I don't want this answered now, but I would love to be able to hear options, and this goes with some of the smaller things, like options for infrastructure where people share infrastructure more than just having everybody have their own sewer, water, and it might have to be rentals. I don't know, but it feels like somehow simplifying infrastructure or reducing infrastructure costs could help us in some situations. I'm not necessarily talking about ADUs probably, because that's one on. But is there a model that we can even just put in the hopper so that we can think about what might be able to be? Does that make sense? And maybe that's something that Public Works could come up with, but just
Shared SDCs on properties next door to each other. Maybe.
Well, I don't know. I just feel like if we're being creative, I feel like people say infrastructure is a huge thing to overcome all the time. So it's like, okay, well, what can we do different? Oh.
Be interesting.
Interesting thought.
Well, the middle housing takes care of that too. If you're doing duplex, triplex, then you're sharing one hookup.
You can do that as long as the ownership's the same. But if there's one sewer hookup and 2 owners of the house, from my personal experience, that's not good.
Yeah, because it's
something you said to flush your t-shirt down the toilet and you gotta pay half of it to have a sewer guy come clean it up. It's not fun.
Sunset Meadows has, like those duplexes, both have separate hookers.
They're all separate, yeah.
So, but I like the idea of what can we do different? I don't know, but is there anything out there, thinking creatively is good?
But I don't know, if everything goes in the same trench, does that reduce costs? It doesn't reduce hookup costs, but it does reduce installation costs.
Right.
I don't know, but it's an interesting point. But I hear what you're saying too. I mean, you run that right down the property line, who's responsible for it? And yes, you're going to pay half the cost of somebody's T-shirt.
And maybe we're talking about rentals. I don't want to debate it all here. I'm just saying, like, is there an idea?
There are lots of duplexes that have one owner that have one common water and sewer.
Yeah. Or mobile home parks sometimes have, 1 meter
I think it's a great question and topic. There's more to come out of that, guaranteed.
Where we only require, they can be off a single meter, so they don't have to pay SDCs for 2 units. That's an advantage.
Do you remember when that Bivy guy came and presented to us about to get to your point, Gary, the higher end homes on wheels, he called them, right? And the specs there was something in there about hookups, shared hookups or something like that.
There was, yeah.
Right? Like, they had kind of a solution. Be interesting to get their take on it.
And if you've not heard of Boxkill, there's a company here in town that's a startup that's building modular units that are fully contained, designed to be dropped onto a site, and connected to a 50 amp service. So, but they have a small heat pump inside and everything. And if they know what they're doing, we have to see if they can get it together with funding and everything. But those are designed to be taken to a site on a flatbed and picked up and dropped onto something. They're not really designed to be moved once they're there, but very efficient. I mean, we've seen them, and
they're built to regular code for a single-family dwelling, or
I'm told, I asked the question, does it meet code for insulation and things like that? And the answer is yes. Now, I don't know. It's foam insulation, so, blow-in stuff. But anyway, but the point is that there are models out there, and that's, like you mentioned, that we should be looking to as we think about how we make sure that if we allow some of these things, that they're built to a standard that we would want to have them on a piece of property in the town, and that they're habitable for 25, 30, 45, 50 years.
My 34-year-old manufactured home has axles underneath it, so be careful, Gary.
No, I know, but not very mobile, though.
There's no wheels, but there are axles.
Yes. Oh, yeah, they don't take them off. My folks have one of those in Florida, too.
One thing that I would like to see come back is we had the housing needs analysis and what's the other one?
Employment lands?
No, the efficiency measures, thank you. And there was a long list of things on the efficiency measures list that we didn't get to. And we said, okay, we are going to adopt some and we will come back to it. And so I'm kind of itching to come back to that list because I think there were some still really good things on there we didn't get to talk about. And for instance, everybody's sick of me saying this on council, but types of housing like dormitory housing, SRO, boarding houses.
Oh, I'm not tired of that. I love it.
Okay. Yeah, just want to be able to visit that topic and see if that's something that we want to add into the code.
are you talking about for the new developments in urban growth, or just through?
In general, I mean, sometimes these things might have to be in certain zones, right, or zoning types, but I think it's just in general. But also, I think it would be helpful, maybe be nice to do it before. That's a big ask, but it's a lot of stuff.
Used to for infill in some
Yeah.
blank spots we have too. We don't have to wait for that acreage there. We can do with what we have.
It'd be nice if there was anything we wanted to add, then it would be added before, people were drawing out very detailed master plans, just so they know that they have it as an option.
When you're talking about dormitory, are you talking, rather than like studio apartments, are you talking about shared kitchen facilities, things like that?
Yeah, possibly, yeah. For a range of reasons, on one end, there's, we have a seasonal workforce, younger people that are like, hey, I need a place to crash. I'm just going to be working and playing, they just need a small space. Obviously, a possible solution for people transitioning out of the forest or, in stable housing.
Like a fancy youth hostel?
Yep, yeah, possibly, yeah.
Or like a college dorm they call quads, where you have your own separate bedroom, common kitchen, and seated area.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody wanted a youth hostel, I don't even think that you could build that, in our code. So, yeah, and I know there was other things in there that we just I haven't looked at it in a while, but.
Yeah, just to respond to that a little bit, to your point, and plug our code audit that we're proceeding down the path of, is a prime opportunity to kind of look at some of those things sooner rather than later. So it's not only are we looking at it from how is our code not compliance with state law, but also under the guise of are there obstacles to housing that we want to clear out and create opportunity for? So over the next year or so, we're going to be having that discussion. So it kind of does dovetail with future growth opportunities, and we don't have to wait till after that.
Yeah, boarding houses, mobile home parks, those things were kind of pushed out of code nationally, right, not just here. And I think there's obviously the 21st century version of those things I think would be very viable, so.
Well, especially we talk factory-built homes and things like that.
Yeah.
That might have been me, sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, but, those are all things too that I think that we don't really think about, because for a while that was kind of a direction you don't want to go. But I mean, you have a house right next to you that's a factory-built home that's in very good condition. You live in one that's in very good condition. If they're done right, they hold up well. And do we need to think about that as we move forward too? I don't know. I don't have an answer, but certainly is something to think about, because that is an affordable option for a lot of people.
And as we're developing the commercial zones area, if we do, the whole live-work thing, with the work below and living above, that's.
I like that idea too.
Except that you shouldn't have to be required to live above, because people that have disabilities, people that are older, it's hard for them to go up a couple flights of stairs with a bunch of groceries all the time. We should allow it to be maybe in the back of the something else.
Nope.
Did you not put understand?
Pardon? No.
Not required.
Yeah.
That's what, no, seriously, that's what the 4-story, that was the big change about going 4 stories, is requirement of an elevator, fire escapes,
And also, if you go over
ladder trucks.
you go over 3 units, you have to have an elevator. But the expense starts to, then your rent starts to go way up and everything else.
$50,000 right there, minimum.
And then maintenance all the time. So not having to have it above. And the other thing is for fire safety, because like where I am, I have a wood shop, and then there's an apartment above. And so you have to be really careful about design and everything else, and what could possibly happen. It would be better not to have stuff.
It's not the most efficient way.
No.
That reminds me, thanks for saying design standards, because I'd really like all of us in this room to think about what we like about what we see around town and what we don't like in other places in town, and see how we can avoid that, moving on to all this. And we all have our ideas, right?
Well, I've heard one mentioned a few times.
Yeah, but I mean, in general, I want to hear it from everybody. I want to know what everybody's thoughts are, and what's the best points about town, and what's the best points about what you don't, what you see, and the worst ones too.
Like, I really like the cottage developments that I've seen for affordable, workforce housing, and, I think they're great.
These are, short-term rentals. It's basically a little hotel complex, but the Scout is cute. They're just cute, That looks good and would look good anywhere, I think, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Clear Pine, and we have a cottage development, which is really, really cool. And
Yeah.
It's got a garden in the middle, and it's.
That's
yeah,
where I was,
awesome.
that's where I was thinking of.
Yeah.
It's well done.
I think you all just woke Peter up back there.
Good job, Peter.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, because I think this is great discussion, that so little opportunity to kind of work together, so I really appreciate this meeting. I'd like to know, and you don't have to tell us now, but if there's anything that city council can be doing to make your life easier. And
Food at our meetings?
We added the council liaison, Councilor Preden.
Which is great, yeah.
Pardon?
Can we trade him out?
Yeah.
Okay, oh,
They want to know what we can do to make it better.
Do a mic drop. No.
but just want to let you know that if there's anything that we can do as a council, I would certainly want to help out. You guys have a really important job for us here in this city. Thank you for all your time.
This is good getting together every once in a while. We should do this quarterly maybe or something, a little more often than once every.
Couple times a year, anyway.
We're good with that.
Kind of understand where everybody's coming from and, hearing your voices as to why.
What's important? We need to hear what's important
I
for
don't
you
mean,
guys.
what are you thinking? I mean, how are you thinking? Yeah.
Certainly, we should get together if there's an important event of some sort, like this. If there's something coming up.
Happy hour?
That's important.
It's important. No, I look around the room and everybody said something, and that doesn't happen very often when you have a table of this many people. A lot of times there's only, there's 2 or 3 people that never say a word, and everybody said something. I think that's great. That shows you it's working, I think. I hope.
Jeremy didn't speak up.
Yeah.
Do you feel from a staff perspective that this was helpful? And are you taking copious notes?
Definitely.
Good.
Both have to interact on things that we do and setting policy to be able to discuss these things and, not necessarily always be on the exact same page, but be in the ballpark.
Brainstorming, I think it was helpful just to brainstorm some of those ideas,
Yeah,
flexibility
I think
ideas.
we were on the same page
Yeah.
on a lot of things too. I mean, I felt it was good hearing you guys, and I feel like we're kind of, we are, meshing with you guys.
Things that are important to us, we're hearing are important to you, so, which is great.
And that, me personally, makes me comfortable because, I don't go to obviously we can't come to the meetings. Can't get a quorum there. One of us could come because Mike was there, but that's about it. And so hearing what you're thinking and what you're doing and how you get to where you're at on these is helpful to me too, to know that when something pops in, I've got faces and names and people that, some of you I've not met before to put all of that on. And know that we're on the same page, even though we may not always come to the same place, we're on the same page and we're going to be pretty darn close. We might be a paragraph apart on some things, and that's good enough for me. Thank you.
So bottom line, thumbs up.
Yeah, thanks for, it's been great.
I would like to say one more thing, sorry.
Got time.
I really like what Kathy talked about and making sure that I think we do a pretty good job of getting public input. This town is very active, and I think we do a good job of that. But there's always one more step we might be able to take. And obviously, Kathy and people that are like her that are concerned can always write in. And I really encourage that because when you write in on a particular topic, it becomes part of the public record for that topic. So please don't ever hesitate of doing that. But having an open house now and again for some of these bigger things, we might want to look at that if we're not doing that already. That's all.
And I would add a written comment. Sometimes I look at that, set it down, I look at it again. So I sometimes will go over those written documents 2 or 3 times, kind of really get a better sense of what I might get in the presentation from the council in our 3 minutes or whatever it happens to be.
I agree, because you'll get it in an email, and then you also, when you show up, at least at the planning commission, it's sitting in front of you. Like, there's a document right in front of you that somebody wrote a letter. Like, this person cares that much. So, you feel like it gets addressed.
When we start working on wildfire resiliency mitigation with, in the municipal code, just clarify this for me, will that be also going through PC, or is that just on council? Because it's uni. Okay. However, since you are this, not to give you more work, I'm just saying you're a brain trust. You guys are really smart and smart. We're going to be working on, changing hopefully the municipal code one way or another to try to, creep towards matching the development code, wildfire stuff, and to kind of protect our existing infrastructure. That's going to be a really challenging lift, to try to change code for an existing area. So it would be really great as we move through that process if you want to pay attention and, please share your thoughts or weigh in, knowing what you know about code and how challenging it can be sometimes to write it.
The whole downtown commercial is a big fire trap.
Yep.
You got all kinds of old buildings stacked right against each other. Yeah.
Yeah, there's, I think there'll be lines between what code changes and then what we want to focus on,
Education.
education and possibly helping people clean up.
Resources, yeah.
Resources.
Stuff like that.
Right, a great example is the dark sky. You know, with the whole thing, I'm getting some lights for my house. I installed them and everything. I mean, but, that really helps. And I made sure all my neighbors saw that, hey, so you can turn off your damn lights so they're not shining in my house. So I think that, having a way to help with the implementation, so you just, unfunded, in the state, we use called unfunded mandate.
Yep.
And I think that's the hard thing. We've actually had some discussion, at least among some of us, as to, as we look at municipal code for existing structures, there's going to be expenses involved in trying to bring some of that up. And how do we encourage that and incentivize that? And
Yeah.
I don't have an answer, but those are things that are going around in the back of my mind. I mean, I know I can afford to do my own home, and I'm doing my own home, but not everybody can afford to do their own home, even to make it safer for their neighbors.
And not even just homes, but the businesses.
Businesses, oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's some that we're a seasonal town, so you're getting great business part of the year, another part of the year not so much, and so trying to make things stretch across and get help. And there's a lot of issues they face along with trying to make
Totally.
their business fire safe.
Well, even like HOAs and stuff, where you get a good cluster of people, with the whole fire-wise, fire safe type stuff, incentivizing that, somehow that, to help HOAs, if we can get 20 people to get, more fire aware right away, I mean, that's a good bang for the buck, if we can figure out some way to do that.
Are we allowed to outlaw HOAs and CCNRs? I'm just asking, Missy.
Use them in our favor is what I'm saying.
Is that even legal for a city to do that?
Outlaw HOAs?
No HOAs or CCNRs in annex areas. Just wondering.
I will think about that. If that's creative.
In new areas.
In new areas.
In the new, and annex, new ones.
Yes.
So we can do that if we wanted to.
I don't know. I'll have to think about it and get back to you.
It's kind of an interesting question because they do limit us in some ways of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
But they also protect the homeowners a lot too, so.
And I don't know, that's what the legislature was trying to get at in telling HOAs, you can no longer prohibit duplexes and middle housing. So I don't know, in some ways they provide some value too. And there is just a category of buyer that has that preference.
Okay. Just was kind of wondering. That just popped up.
I'm going to look into it though.
Well, and as an aside, as you look into it, are there things that you can allow HOAs, but are things that you can say that an HOA can't prohibit, like we just talked about, duplexes, and there may be some other things as well.
Right.
Well, you might want to think about that too.
Yeah.
Think about
Your master plan or subdivision standards is, do you really want a lot of grass that needs to be irrigated, or should it be rock and,
Right. The HOAs used to require shake roofs.
Right.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Put kindling on your
Not the
roof.
smart ones, but.
And pine board siding.
I know
Yeah.
that
Cedar siding.
back in the mid-2000s, we approved a subdivision, and they wanted to do an HOA, and in our brilliance, which turned out to be terrible, we wanted to be a member of the HOA, to be a voting member, and that was a bad decision. And we got in trouble for that. The planning commission got in trouble for voting on that, to be a member of the homeowners association. I think Steve Bryant answered quickly on that one for us.
That's awesome.
He was the city attorney, and he wasn't there.
It sounds like something we recorded in Redmond too. I think he was the city attorney over there.
Yeah. He told us immediately, no, we got letters quickly.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you all for attending. This was great for you.
Yes, thank you, you guys.
Feedback from us. We don't have to talk very much. So.
Any other comments from staff?
I think that was enough.
That was it? Okay.
Look for a packet next Thursday for the hearing.
All right.
All right.
Let's
Wow.
adjourn. 5 minutes.